First up is Rick with his mag loop.
All right. I'll try it. Can you hear me without this?
Nope. No.
All right.
Nope. What?
KB4MIS, Rick. You probably seen me at the last meeting at the church. I made a mag loop that was similar to this, but it had heliax. I was using heliax. Didn't work too well. I had it out in the park and just wasn't ideal. So started rethinking things, and I've gone through about 4 or 5 iterations of this. I just keep tearing it apart and rebuilding it. But I got some copper strap from Georgia Copper. It was like really cheap for 20-some feet of a remnant. And I came up with this idea to go with copper strap. And instead of making a loop, I made an oval. It's the surface area that's important, so that's why I did that. But I also wanted to make it a remote control thing. So I went on Amazon.com, buys on Amazon, got a little remote controller, so now I can control it. It can be outside, and I tune it with my DNA, my nano DNA. There's a couple ways of tuning it. You can do it by sound, or you can do it by DNA. So I use the DNA. Got a little power switch on the side, activates the whole system.
What's a VNA?
Vector Network Analyzer. It's this little gizmo here. They're really cheap. And it allows you to measure SWR, losses, any number of things. What am I doing with it? I'm just looking at it actually right now.
It's a waterfall.
What I do is I want to know what frequency it's resonant at. So I usually don't chase any stations or anything like that. It just takes too much time to tune it. So I do a lot of FT8 with the loop. So because I sit on 14074 or 21074 with, well, this is a 20, 17, 15 meter loop. The size of the loop is very important with that. I'm now working toward making a 6 meter one for when 6 meter activity comes back, and we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I set this so that it's at 14.074, and then with my remote control, I know you can't see it, but this little motor down here runs at 2 RPM per minute. So it's very slow. And you can actually watch. You can actually watch your tuning and see when you hit the lowest SWR. Okay? And probably SWR is the most important thing, but your radio likes it. So once you have it close to where you are, you don't have to use a tuner if you get it to near. And most radios actually have built-in tuners. I use a 7300, so it's got a built-in tuner. But you want to get it there close anyway. So that's basically it. And if you want to switch bands, it takes a little more tuning, but you just pull up your VNA, plug in the frequency you want to tune it to, and then tune your rig. This is a vacuum variable capacitor. That's probably the most expensive part of this whole rig. That was like 150 bucks. The rest of it, cheap. I mean, these curtain rod rollers, they're like 8 or 10 bucks on Amazon. The battery was 20-some bucks, 30 bucks, something like that. And the rest was pretty cheap. PVC, this copper strap, I got 22 feet for about 40 bucks. So, plenty of strap to play with. It works pretty darn good. I wish I brought my logs, but I've worked most of the country, no problem.
What bands does it cover?
20, 17, and 15.
How high do you have it? What's your elevation?
Oh, it sits on if I have it in the garage during thunderstorm season, it sits in my garage. It's on some bins. It's about 3 or 4 feet off the ground. During the rest of the year, when we're not getting storms and all, it sits out on a wall in front of my house, which is about 3 foot.
That's great.
They don't have to be high. My neighbors don't bother it, thank goodness. The squirrels don't bother it. I actually added that to it because I didn't want somebody coming up and grabbing it, you know. So, but it's a fun project.
What's the value of the vacuum cap?
It's not a whole lot, it's
300?
something to 400,
Okay.
and it's 7,500 volts.
Okay, and
So you can't pump a lot of power into this. The most I use is about 30 watts.
What kind of bandwidth do you have?
Pardon?
What kind of bandwidth do you have on it when you tune it for?
Narrow, very narrow. 50, maybe.
Does the strap help it be a little wider?
No.
Or do you notice a difference?
That's the thing about mag loops. That's why I've been experimenting with different things like copper tubing, heliax, the strap, thinking maybe I could broaden that. It doesn't. It doesn't get broader. I don't know why. You know. It's a very high Q. Yep, yep. So no matter what the elements are, but this was easy to work with, the flat stuff. I'm not very good at soldering pipe, so I didn't want to use pipe. This was very easy. I just used screws.
Even with that vacuum cap, the only amount of power you put in it was about 30 watts?
Yeah, if you run the mag loop calculator,
Yeah.
say on 20 meters, if I pump 50 watts, it's going to override what this tube is able to handle.
You talk about the breakdown.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it'll do it. So you really can't put a lot of power into this tube. Now, there's other tubes that, you know, they'll go up to 15,000, 30,000, 50,000 volts.
Right.
But this is a
What's the voltage on it?
7,500. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't bring any paperwork or anything like that. But if you go on mag loop calculator, it's got a little thing, you plug in numbers. They'll start giving you all the numbers like the size, the dimensions, the voltages, all that stuff will come up on there. And then you know how to play with it. You can tweak it too, you know, with the calculator. It's a fun little project, keeps me busy, keeps me out of the wife's hair.
Thanks a lot.
That's the key at the end of the day.
Next up, Felix with battery balancer.
Just that, so like if you have an
Test 1, 2, 3. Okay, much better. At least I'm not talking like that. My name is Felix, KI14WQ. This I put together, I don't remember how long ago, but probably I was bored in my kitchen and eating breakfast or dinner. And of course, I got was checking my DeWalt batteries because these things are very expensive. And so I want to make sure these cells are balanced because if they go out of whack, the problem with them is, of course, you will ruin them really quick. And so the thing of it is that I can do it with a, what do you call it, a good old fluke meter and probe each one, and hopefully I don't short something out and let the electrons out too quickly. So that's another story altogether. But the thing about it was I had leftover parts and found out that most of your DeWalt batteries, I don't know about others because I got way too many of them, the balancing circuit is actually not in the battery itself. So what it actually does, the tool actually monitors one of the cells, so if it gets to a certain threshold, it shuts the tool down. So when you're charging it, that's why they have all these millions of pins on the charger itself. So I said, well, I got one of these hobby battery checkers, and of course the interface cord that dangles out of this charger, so I did voided warranty. I got plenty of voided warranties on experiments like this. So what I did is I had to look it up online and figure out which pins go to which, and what that allowed me to do is when I pop this into the charger without plugging it in, I plug in my hobby battery checker on there, and it'll actually show me all the voltages. Now, you can buy a cheapo one that just tells you voltage. This one here, as I guess somebody colloquially call it, bought it from the jungle site. I think everybody knows what that is. I think it's running about $30, And this one, I like about it is you can update the firmware, and you can even balance the cells. It takes forever and a day, but you can do it. So pretty much, once I solder everything together, I just plug it into my charger, make sure it lines up properly. And let me see here, I'm gonna use a lighter. I hate using one bad thing about flex volt batteries, they weigh like a ton of bricks. That came out of my lawnmower. So once you plug it in, you'll hear a loud beep, and it will tell you all the voltages. Right now I have is 3.15 volts per cell roughly, and I have a difference between the cell of 21 millivolts. Now, and then I just plug it in and let it go, and when it's fully charged, you can go back to it and look at it and say, oh, okay, everything's good. The biggest thing is a top balance, so at least you know if your charger is doing its job. And especially when you're dealing with 2 amp hour battery packs, I think John can vouch, because they're lower capacity, they tend to drift a lot. And it can drift a lot very quickly, and he's found out that it drifted so badly that he was running his tools, and it was like, hey, what the heck, what's going on? And of course, he has his homemade version of it.
The charger will charge up to, if you've got 5 batteries or whatever, it will charge up to the battery that's the highest voltage. So you get one that's low and one that's high. The tool picks off the low one, and the charger picks off the high one. So you've got a working space about that big. It's just, so if you balance them, then you've got the full amount for the battery.
And that's what this little gizmo, so the nice part about it is you can charge it up, and once it hits as high a voltage, then what you do is you go into the menu settings, tell it to balance, walk away. Eventually, maybe about half an hour, 45 minutes later, you'll hear it do a double chime. You go back to it and go, oh, okay, it's balanced. Unplug, of course, unplug the charger, wait about a few seconds, and plug it back in, and it'll restart the charging cycle again. And usually, if everything is fairly healthy, you'll be somewhere between 10 to 15. I've seen on a good day 3 to 5 millivolts difference between the cells, and worse maybe 10. But your tool will love it. You'll get better runtime because of the balance.
Yeah, you'll think you've got bad batteries, but you don't. They're just out of balance.
And when you're talking about a 9 amp hour flex volt, this one here comes at a nice hefty, I think on special was $99.99. And yeah, and my next one, I just ordered the 12 amp hour version, and those are $309 a piece delivered. And those, like I said, these go in, I mean, the only, because I use, and the nice part about it is that I bought a inverter that are compatible with these batteries. So if I need portable power, I can just throw 2 of these darn things in there, and I get 600 watts worth of 120 volts for about maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. But you know, it sure beats dragging the generator out so that I can drag. The only sucking part about the whole thing is the 12 amp hour ones. I think they're like 3.5 pounds a piece. So it will become bone anchor pretty quick. But that's pretty much. I got bored, and like I said, one day, and then later on, a couple of days later, of course, since I fully vested in DeWalt tools, I even have the 12 volt version to plug in my car. But, and of course, I added this little pigtail for it. And I think the only thing I'm missing, which I haven't got around to, is I like to put a, what do you call that silly thing? Anderson power poles on it, but it's just that, you know how that goes. Life gets in the way, and work, and a little bit of OCD and ADHD, and next thing you know, it was to say, I have one project, next thing you know, say, everyone can attest that, squirrel. So, I think that, any questions? Yes, sir.
I'm just kind of curious, that's great technology. I'm wondering why DeWalt and Bosch and so, why don't they fill that into your stuff, you know, so that they can, well, yeah, no, right.
Well,
so what's better, exactly
well, there is, now, what's mixed, now, I'm going by DeWalt's theory, and of course, I am is kind of anecdotal. Why they did it was, one is cost. So instead of having, the balancing circuit is in the charger and leaving it out of the battery, because I can vouch for the Ryobi, was it One Plus, I believe they call their line. I'm not a big fan of it, and the only reason why is because they have an onboard BMS. And the problem with those is that anytime you add more electronics to the battery, the more potential point of failure. And if that BMS goes out, guess what? Your battery's toast. At least these, because they're letting the tool do the work, have some advantages, because one, you can keep the cost of the batteries down. I mean, this one here is what, 1.5 or 2 amp hours. They don't even have a fancy, what do you call it? Let's see, wait, that's one here. Fancy light to let you know how much charge is in there. How useful it is, you know, your mileage may vary. But I think this one here, like I said, I just did it because I just wanted, I used to just do it with the fluke meter in, and I just go one at a time and do the quick math. But I just wanted something where I could just do a quick look. For the most part, if you cycle the batteries, and then say, you know, cycle them, run them down a little bit, and leave them, it's just kind of, like I said, I just want to have an idea. They don't drift. Thank goodness they don't. If you use it, they don't drift that much, believe it or not. There are certain weird quirks that, like I said, when they come out of the factory, sometimes they might be a little out of whack. But we don't know until you try it. So this is my way of working around it. I have recovered a couple batteries that someone, like John was mentioning, is like, you know, you think they're bad, and you look at it and go, oh, it's out of whack. Charge it up. Once it stops, hit the balance, then recycle the charger again to let it go through another cycle, and do that a couple times, and eventually it fixes itself. Saves you before I try to claim it on, but you know how it is when you're trying to claim warranty, forget it. More trouble than it's worth. Anyone else?
Yeah, what causes one cell to go flaky compared to the other ones?
Just tolerance. There's really no answer why it does that. I mean, now if you want to get like some of the ones that are the no-name brands in the jungle site, they claim they have, I think one of them, Ultra Fire, 9,000 milliamp hours on an 18650. You do the math and you do the watt hours per milligram. You can pretty much know that dog ain't gonna hunt. But no, there are times where you just have a bad cell. But in most cases, usually, like I said, once in a while, like I said, if you cycle it all the way till it's pretty much almost like basically drag out of the ground dead, and then charge it all the way up, you might, it's kind of weird. Lithium is kind of weird. Some cells might age a little more rapidly than the other, but usually 8 to 10 millivolts difference when it's fully top balanced, it's perfectly fine. So
I think if you're deep cycling like that, the difference gets to be greater the more you do it.
And also, the smaller the battery pack. Now, like this big, I mean, that came out of my lawnmower. Now you have to use 2 of these, and I've ran it for almost 2 years. 10 millivolts difference, and that's 2 seasons.
I wonder if the smaller battery packs go out of whack more because they don't have any cells in parallel?
That's possible.
The big ones are like a parallel and the serial arrangement, but the really small ones is just gonna be.
Just one single. Yeah, these are. I have never taken one apart, but I'm going to make the safe presumption they're just 5 cells.
Yeah, that's what the Ryobis are. I think these bunch of them apart.
Yeah. So, yeah, and of course, a lot of the Ryobi batteries that are quote bad was usually the FET that does the low and high voltage protection usually poops out on it, and when that happens, well, guess what? You got to go get a new battery pack. Now, unless you
swap the FET, put it back together.
Or like that, or the other one is just I usually just scavenge it for cells. That's why I don't even unless you got a hot air rework station. I'm not gonna even my time my time and my eyeballs are not helping me as much, so I'll just scrap them for sales. That's
Thanks
it.
a lot.
All right.
Next up, we'll do, Alex with his mic stand.
Oh boy. Oh man.
Good.
This one's nowhere near as impressive as
Okay, cool. So, I've got sort of this long-standing idea that I eventually want to get a radio kit that I can pack down that will fit in the bags of my bicycle. Right. Not there yet. Particularly the battery pack I have is way too big and heavy, but I do have one of these antennas. Anybody have one of these? Yeah, or something similar to it. They kind of suck. And so I used to use it on a camera tripod. And the problem with using it on a camera tripod is it's up this high and it's really wobbly unless you bring like guy wires and stuff to stake it down to the ground. And at that point, how much crap are you packing along in order to use a tiny little antenna? So I tried to make a spike to hold it on the ground, and that didn't work so well. You know, it just kind of fall over. And also, when it's up that high on top of the mic stand, the SWR really sucks for the higher bands because the radials are sort of drooping down at a weird angle. And then there was a Torque Fest, and there's this dude selling a broken microphone stand, like the one I think Billy's got kind of over there.
It's in the pickup now.
Yeah, oh, you put it away? Okay. So if you ever seen one of those, they got like a little squat tripod. And so I saw this, and I kind of wanted like $2 for it. So all I did was it took way more time than it should have, but I had a couple of washers and a SO239 mobile mount, and finagled the darn thing in there after removing the pole. And so now I've got this thing that sits pretty square on the ground. And you can't really see it anymore, but I can put that antenna on it, or I can set it up on top of something, and it won't blow over, and I don't have to stake it to the ground, and I don't have to bring ropes or anything, and yeah, it just works great. I think the farthest contact I've gotten off of that antenna and this thing was doing Parks on the Air down at the Skyway Bridge, and I talked to a dude in Wyoming with it.
Wow. What antenna is that?
Oh, it's a.
I'm gonna get to the bottom.
Oh, it's over here.
It's a moonraker.
Oh no. It's a Comet HFJ 350.
Was it toy box?
No, the toy box is the one that has the extra loading coil.
Right, okay.
For if you want to have a joke about an antenna this long on 160.
Flying lead down
Yeah.
here with your frequency and bandwidth. And then you got the
Or is it impossible to get a new one?
no, I just
Yeah. I've got a little elbow connector for it, because if I'm just listening, I just screw it onto the back of the radio. You really can't operate it like that. It needs the coax. It performs horribly screwed right into the back of the radio. I've done it, but yeah.
What band?
Oh, this thing's multi-band. It does like whatever.
whatever.
Never heard that,
Yeah,
man.
it does everything. It's
What's the bandwidth for
80
whatever
through
band?
6 meters, but
2200.
obviously it performs pretty poorly on the lower bands because, like, at most, what is it, 5 feet tall?
And you say you ran radios with that too?
You have to. You absolutely have
So
to.
what do you do for radio length?
Oh,
How many?
I've got a spool of wire. It's about 4 of them are about 15 feet long.
Okay.
Sometimes you got to arrange them in weird patterns to make it actually tune up. But yeah, the only thing DIY about it was the mount for it. So yeah, that's my offering. Any other questions? Yeah.
Something I'd seen in the RSGB manual about counterpoises.
Uh-huh.
Ribbon cable, 18-gauge ribbon cable, cut quarter way, like reach that and you want to work on it, and at the end, flare it out, and you've got a kind of like a ground plane slash counterpoise that's easy to roll up.
Yeah, you just got to find a long enough ribbon cable.
Oh yeah, I see them on Pete's rolls on Amazon. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's an idea. I just measured out, like, I think some 18-gauge wire and clipped them all to a, I guess there is one more DIY thing about this. If you have one of these, they come with a stupid little tiny, easy-to-lose black screw to attach the counterpoise wires with. And I discovered by digging through my parts bin that the thumb screws off of a particular model of HP desktop computer to remove the case fits the same threads. And they're way more suitable for that than the tiny little screws. Like, what are you gonna carry around a screwdriver to just to screw that thing in? It's stupid. Yeah.
I've seen people use, like a ring terminal on that screw so it stays there.
Yeah.
And then just like a butt splice that'll plug, or like almost like a one plug trailer light kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, that's a much better idea. I don't know why Comet didn't do that from the factory. They could have used the same plug as for the little jumper thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I got.
Thanks a lot. Next up, Charles with the magic box.
Magic box.
Like a,
My daughter, I made this, and my daughter nicknamed it the magic box. I took a battery out for my first, got lights on it. I took my daughter out for my first photo activation, and I just connected up a battery with some little baby jumper cable looking things, and when it was all fiddly, and they kept sliding off, and then I was afraid I was going to shock them, short them or whatever, and it just was dumb. I didn't like it, and it was fiddly, and it's 10% radio and 90% nerd stuff. So I over-engineered it, which is more or less my entire career professionally, is over-engineering things. So I went to Harbor Freight, and I bought myself a $7 tackle box. And in there I put a, there's a 12 amp hour LifePo 4 battery that will output 15 amp. There's a charge controller in there, does MPPT solar charging as well as just 12 volt charging. And it has a LifePo setting, so it'll actually charge the LifePo battery. And then I put a million switches, and it's all very analog on the inside. But you basically power a couple of USB chargers there, so there's 4 phone chargers, a couple of Anderson power poles. One, they're the same. I just labeled them separately. One's 5 amp, one's 15. So if I'm using a bunch of stuff on here, I can use it on. If I'm using the 15 amp, I turn everything else off because the battery only likes to put out max of 15 amp. So I just label them that way, and it's very cool. Of course, I needed a cool turquoise display to know how much battery life was in there, also totally necessary and important for the experience. And then I knew that there were going to be times where I just wanted the whole horsepower of that battery, so I wired on some direct poles. I just use super heavy gauge speaker terminals so that I can basically just pull wires straight down on there, or use banana plugs or whatever. So if I just want to take something straight off there, get to the battery without opening up and fiddling around as I can. And it's been great. It's been rock solid. I actually built another one for the kids that doesn't have all the I used a cheaper controller, and I didn't put the power poles on the output side. I'm going to put a bunch more USBs on the side. I mean, so we take it camping, the other one, and we can plug in every damn thing we have into it, and it'll charge everything. We basically charge everything we own kind of 1.5 times. And then I just stick a solar panel in. It takes maybe 3 hours, 2.5 hours to recharge. I got a nice big unfolding solar panel I put into it. So that's the magic box. What?
Where did you get the solar controller?
I played with a cheap one, cheap Chinese one that I did not like. And then I tried to build my own out of components, constituent components, and that went hilariously bad. So I bought the West Mountain Radio Epic Power Gate, and it's a lovely. I mean, it's a lovely product. It's a little. I mean, they were very proud of it when they set the price. But to be honest with you,
But clearly you didn't have good experiences elsewhere.
No, I probably didn't spend as much on all my experiments as buying one of those.
That's what I was wondering.
But I ended up using the West Mountain. Yeah, the Chinese one was okay. I wasn't satisfied with it, and it wasn't RF quiet, and that was the biggest problem. West Mountain Radio one
about the 5 volts. I mean, is that RF quiet?
I've never heard sound. I've never heard.
Where did you get the 5 volt converters, the 5 volt output?
Oh, these are 12 volt for your car. Everything here is regular cigarette lighter.
Don't you said you had USB output on that?
Yeah, they're right here. So basically, I bought.
So where did you get that from?
I mean, physically buy it, or
so
everything is 12 volt.
Are you
it does a 12 volt conversion inside. This is meant to install in the car.
Yeah. Where did you?
Amazon.
Okay.
eBay, Amazon.
Well, not a lot of 5 volt converters from 12 to 5 or noise on it.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting
that.
that. And you can actually turn them off individually. So I was kind of expecting that. It turned out to be. And then the real find was this. I don't remember the brand name, but if you just search for battery monitor on Amazon, This battery monitor is amazing. I used a bunch, it's got a huge shunt on the inside, and my buddy liked it so much, they make a 500 amp version with a giant shunt, and he put one on his RV, and he loved it, and it's apparently super popular. I just got lucky when I bought it, so. But it's great, it's really pretty accurate, it tells me what battery life is left, it's never lied to me, so. I know you, I'm sure you know which one it is, man.
Yeah, I got one for my, what do you call it, my ABC.
You can take it apart later, I know you don't wanna look at it.
On the monitor, does it, draw current when you're not using it?
No, you'll see, actually, that's why I kept pushing the button, it goes to sleep, there's, I mean, the whole thing, if I just leave it, if I leave it like that, the monitor stays connected, and the parasitic drain, I haven't charged it, you're not supposed to leave it 100%, please don't yell at me. I haven't plugged this in to be charged in, just before we moved on the boat, so that'd be
So it
like
doesn't have a parasitic draw?
probably June, and it's still showing 100%.
So it doesn't have a parasitic draw?
If it does, it's too
So
small.
a lot of them do.
Actually, like the O4 batteries now, you can leave it at 100%, it's not gonna hurt.
But no, it's been great, no, it hasn't had no issues with it, and it's, works great for him.
What kind of solar panel you have and how much was it?
I actually I have it bookmarked on my Amazon, because every time I go somewhere with it, somebody asks and I share it, so if you come up or if anybody wants it, I can post it. It goes on sale, there's like a brand name that everybody likes on Amazon, it's like Chronology or something, it's not that one. So there's another one, I found it by clicking on that one going, this is too expensive.
This is what others look at.
And it was that one, the other one's like 100 watt or whatever, and I figured,
There's Bouge RV, there's another one called,
there's a couple, but the one I found is actually like, it's 150 watt. It's a little bit bigger in all dimensions, and then it trifolds. Yeah, Rock Powell's the other one.
no, there's a lot of them.
But it's 150 watt, and when it goes on sale, you get it for around $100.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but if you find it, if you don't get it on sale, I just learned, I just put it in the shopping cart, and when Amazon emails me and tells me it went on sale. And I bought 3 or 4 of them now, and yeah, they're great. I love that solar panel. We have a couple of them.
I know exactly.
Did you follow a build guide for this, or was it totally DIY, or?
No, I just drew it out and knew what I wanted, and.
I would
and
be
got
very
the-
interested, I don't know about anybody else, but I would really be interested to see a parts list for that, because I'd like something like that, and I have no idea where to even start, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd
Yeah, I
be
think
really
I probably, knowing me, I probably drew it on a computer or scanned it or saved it or whatever, but I just sort of sketched it out. I knew I wanted a two-way toggle switch on the top so I could get to binding posts.
Right.
Or fully off, disconnecting the battery except from the monitor, and then on the, so that was pretty much where I started from, and I just started drawing it until I drew it and then threw that away because I ran on paper on the right side, so I just
Right.
on the left side, and I ran on wood on that side. But eventually I got a drawing that worked, and I put it together and realized I had screwed up badly and it was leaking voltage because the off switch was on the wrong side or something, whatever I had to go back and do, but just, trial and error, but it works great. I mean, like that one, like I said, that's a couple of years old now, and we take it camping, and I put my 7300 on it, no problem.
That's awesome, yeah, I just recently got into photo, and, my power poles are so finicky that if you hit them, they unplug, so it'd be cool to get them with more sturdy and, more water resistant and stuff like that.
Yeah, this thing's
more
pretty good.
durable.
I wouldn't say it's any sort of waterproof, but everything's got rubber.
The inside is, but I guess
gasket.
the outside, yeah, probably.
But it's been in the rain and stuff, and it's never had an issue, and, so. Any other questions?
Thanks a lot. Next up, Paul, the capacitor conditioner. Want the mic?
I can talk pretty loud. Can everybody hear me? So, as a lot of you know, I'm a retired electrical engineer. And I have a friend who's a retired mechanical engineer. Sometimes we get together and make a whole engineer and work on projects. He'll have some mechanical thing, we'll have some electronic stuff taken apart, I'll have an electronic thing, and I'll need some mechanical support. So he called me, and his wife had a major problem with her margarita machine. He torn it apart. He thought he found the problem on the board. He used to make boards. And said, well, can you come over because I'll plug this in, it blows fuses. I'm like, so I've been collecting some components to make this up for the future for using like conditioning capacitors and radios. So I took it over there, and as I'm looking at his board, finding out that the bridge rectifier diodes are shorted across it, and it doesn't have a transformer. All right, so I brought him up and I kind of laid out schematic a little bit, and he built it up for me because that's his thing. And so what we've got here, oh, by the way, we did get his margarita machine working. So what we've got here is basically a power cord going into an outlet with a switch, going into an isolation transformer that is a 250 VA. And then in series is a 200-watt incandescent lamp. It's being used as a current limiter. I'll explain in a moment. And then it goes to a variac. Now, variacs are basically a single coil on a magnetic material that you have the input and the output on the same coil. Now, you can, depending upon where the wiper goes, will determine what the output voltage is, because it's a ratio between the number of turns on each side. Now, what that means, though, is that variac, if you hook it up to your line, hook it up to your house power, it's live. In other words, one side's hot and one side's ground. So if you stand in the funnel, touch it, bang. So you don't want to do that. So that's why we got the isolation transformer. Now, that one happens to be 250 VA, which means that the voltage and the amperage, if this is the voltage waveform, and this is the amperage waveform, in other words, it doesn't really matter if you have a power factor of 1 or it's something less than that, it's still, the transformer has to put that out. And the reason that's important is because they rate these as VA instead of watts. Watts is like current times voltage. Well, that's the real part. So when the current and the voltage go out of phase, what happens is you get the part that doesn't overlap, and that's the imaginary part. And so the lamp at 200 watts, if you take 200 and divide it by 125, typically our house voltage is 120, you get like 1.6 amps. So if I were to actually short the lamp across the isolation transformer and power up the lamp, the most I'm going to get is I'm going to get a bright lamp, and it limits the amount of current. So in other words, if I short it out, I don't blow things up. Okay? And you can tell how much current's going through by how bright it is. It's like a fuse in series. And then I can adjust the voltage from the variac. So what we've got here is a Helicrafter radio that I purchased at SparkFest about a year ago, and I haven't played with it yet, other than just put a little nick on the power cord and tape it up. So I took the cover off because when you go to conditioned capacity, let's talk about that for a second. What am I talking about when I say conditioning of capacity? Capacitors, the power capacitors are aluminum electrolytic. So what happens is that the chemistry inside that capacitor will ultimately fail by its very nature. And you can, it's almost like a battery that where it kind of goes dead, like an iCAD, but chargeable. So what happens is that the voltage rating on that capacitor, it'll decrease as the age of it's not being used. It continues, so that it's actually good to periodically turn the radios on and let them leave them powered up for a few hours. If you got old ones, turn them on, let them run, listen to them, because basically it improves the chemistry so that the capacitor can withstand the voltage. So that's the reason what we do is we bring it up like at 25 volts AC and leave it sit there for like 12 hours. And recondition those caps and bring it up to 50, let it sit for another 12 hours. Bring it up to 75 volts and let it sit there for another 12 hours. And we're going to turn this on. So I haven't done this. Now, I was in high school once in shop class, and we built these little power supply, like little variable power supply kits as part of the shop class. And one of the guys, he put the capacitor wrong and it blew up. So they can do that, and you don't really want that. So what we're going to do is that...
so everybody in the front row is throwing your goggles and mask right now.
Well, okay, so anyhow, so currently I don't have this turned on, but I just turned on the switch, which now I've got a voltage here, and you can see I'm drawing some current because this variac I paid less than $10 for, and it's out of the 40s. So the magnetics is not the perfect, so there's some inefficiency in it, and it's like leakage current, right, in the way it's working. So what I'm going to do is, I'm currently set at, 0 volts there, and I'm going to turn this guy on, there we go. So now what we're going to do, we're going to crank it up to like about 25 volts here. I know that from the meter, from the markings on here, that it's about 25. I've measured it before. So basically, that's what it is. So it's a capacitive conditioning current. You can see a little bit of dimmer. But it's got all these little caps in there. And so I know you had turned this on. the fact that said that, so I'll crank it up some more. So it's like,
Brought it up with a video.
you brought up the variant, same thing I'm doing right now, so it's like 50 volts right now. So you can see, it's drawing excessive current, it's turned on, you can see the lamps on, and that's really what it's all about. So the whole point is to, again, for his Mark Rita machine, I said, well, we can put this together and use it, because we can crank it up some, and just see that if it shorts out, we'll know, we can check the voltage, and we're just not smoking it. Do I have any questions?
Cool.
I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead.
I had a comment about the isolation transformer. Another reason why you want that kind of thing is if you have other instrumentation you use to measure whatever it is you're troubleshooting, like an oscilloscope or a voltage into the wall, you don't have that, you blow up your test equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't have one of those on my bench. I need to get one.
Well, and speaking of that, so like a lot of, and I've run into this looking at low power, low voltage signals like microphone signals. I've worked on some radios, and a lot of the times trying to get the microphones part to work. I was taking a radio that's designed to go in aircraft with this whole comm system and put it into a pickup truck for a guy who actually worked for the FAA. And so in that process, what I discovered is that, I mean, oftentimes I'll take the older scopes that the return line is grounded, and I'll isolate it. But you can't do that when you're looking at microvolts, because you get a lot more than that at 60 hertz. It's just getting everywhere. So you have to ground the chassis of the scope, which means the scope return lines are grounded. So if you want a signal, you've got to use 2 scope probes and put it in differential mode in order to be able to take a measurement. And that way, it's isolated. So your 2-channel scope just turned into a single channel scope. So sometimes it's good to have 4 channels because now you've got 2 channels. And I found that a lot of times I need 2 or 3 scopes. One for demodulated audio, another one for the signals that you're looking at. So, and basically, as you said here, and go. Any other questions?
Yeah, well, one of the things with your isolation transformers, if you work on any receivers or whatnot that have transformer accounts.
Bingo. The AC/DC radios that were very common, like with 5 tubes in them.
Yes, the lower price Telepressors, National, any of those radios.
Yes.
All American 5, basically.
And it's great for safety because I can actually touch any electrical surface in here as long as I'm only touching one of them, and I'm not going to get shot. There won't be a voltage on it because I'm isolated from the ground system. Basically, it's
Hold my beer.
well, honestly, it's like it's a real problem. So it's a real problem because I've actually worked with a guy that didn't follow safety protocols and ended up dying. Okay? So it's I mean, I did some Westinghouse engineering services as well as co-op, and so I got the stories that way. But the point is like, you're absolutely right, safety is very important, very critical, and it helps a whole lot. All right, that's all I got for you.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, I am up next with my project was installed at my house, so it's I couldn't bring it in. So,
We could pick it up.
So I have a Flex radio, and I have only 1 antenna at the time. So in my old house I have 3, and it has a lot of antenna ports. So I was looking at new antennas that I could add to it to just get more antennas, basically. I was thinking of doing a inverted L, but then I have to put up a mast, and I was searching around and I found this loop on ground antenna. So it is by kk5jy.net, has like all the information you could want about this antenna. It is a wire antenna that's 15 feet on the side, making a square like you can see here. And it has an isolation transformer. It's almost very similar to what we've got here, but significantly smaller. So the antenna is directional, and it's receive only. It's literally on the ground. I've got a picture of it on the next slide. And you get directional directivity and off the corners from where you attach it from. So here it is in my yard. I put it in with tent stakes first to test it out and make sure that it would actually work at all before I made it more permanent. And so you can see I've kind of just put it off to the side, and I've got it tacked down with landscaping staples now, so supposedly it'll disappear into the ground and I'll be able to mow over it, and I've kind of been letting my lawn grow. I'm gonna test out that theory tomorrow. Here it is from further away, so you can't really see them, but it's around that tree there. So it's also, I put the wire is in the bushes, so I kind of crawl under the bushes a little bit to put it in there. And then my vertical, you can barely see it on the top there. It was windy, so it's kind of curved over a little bit. So here is the part that I built. It's a isolation transformer. It's got 2 turns on one side, and it's either 5 or 6 turns on the other side, and that is depending on whether you use 75 ohm or 50 ohm. So I had some leftover RJ6, so I just used that. So it's 5 turns for that. The formula is a squared ratio of turns, and then divided by the other side is 450 ohms on the antenna side. Then I put an F connector on there, and this is what the actual device looked like. So I was looking for some thin wire. I had some wire wrap wire from my college board days when I was putting boards together, but I couldn't find the spool that I had, and I only had like 2-inch pieces, and to do 5 turns you need like 8 inches. And I called Charles to see if he had some. He's like, oh, just use a Cat 5 cable and cut it open. And that was a little too thick for that time. This thing's about this big, so it was a little too thick for that. I put it out there with the Cat 5 cables in there, and it didn't work. There was no signal at all. So I got some 36 gauge magnet wire and wrapped that around there, and then unsoldered the Cat 5, and then resoldered it. So that's why it was a little sloppy. But stainless steel screws, and that's a number 73 binocular core ferrite. Here's what it looks like in the wild. I'll probably put some leather on it, but it's a pretty tight case, and the other guy used the same one and said it worked good for a year. I just put this in last weekend, so I haven't had a ton of time to test it in real life, but here's a pan adapter view of it. On the top is the log on the ground, and on the bottom is my 0.5 vertical. You can see the noise floor is probably -130 on that one, and we've got -110 over on the vertical. So the signals are a little bit brighter on the vertical, but it's much clearer on the log or loop on the ground. So I think the Flex has diversity reception, so you can put one antenna on one ear and one on the other, and I think this will work well for that case. But we'll see how it goes. I was doing some FT8 with it, and I have one of the lobes is pointed towards Bouvet, so.
Coincidence.
Yeah. Here's the parts list. I used 60 feet, 14 gauge, THHN, $14 from Amazon. The box is $2.50. The ferrite was 79 cents. The box and the ferrite I got from Mauser. The rest of this stuff was from Amazon. The magnet wire, I didn't. If you already have it, you don't have to buy it because you only need like a foot. F connectors $1.25. The landscape staples were $14. If you have stainless screws, I would use them. The box came with little screws, and I only had it out there for overnight once, and the screws were already soldered on that. So I used the stainless screws. I bought a box of them, and I put those into the box to replace those screws, as well as for the terminals. And then 75 ohm coax. I already had that, so I didn't pay for that. So like not counting the wire and the landscape staples, it's like $5 for the transformer. It's not grounded, and I think for similar reasons why you were mentioning how you're not grounded there. So it's similar to a beverage if you don't have room for a beverage, but you don't. In this case, you don't ground it since it's looped. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I just read about this the other day as well, and I think, and help me out if I understand this properly, it doesn't really amplify your signal, but because your noise floor is so much quieter, you can hear better.
And you can preamp it too. I didn't have the preamp on in that, but you can put it up, plus 24 dB, and it kind of fluffs out the CW, but it does give you more signal.
What kind of bandwidth do you have on it?
It works from, I've used it on 160, I mean, it's full, here's on 160, and it's, down to 20 it wasn't so great, and, it's hit or miss, but it's, on 80 is where it seems to be the sweet spot.
Receive only.
Yeah, it's receive only, yeah, it's not a transmit.
Why do you have receive only?
Well, it's on the ground, so it's, if you tried to transmit it, all the power would go right into the ground. And it would,
You can use two antennas,
Yeah.
one for receive, one for transmit. So
Yeah,
different
yeah.
characteristics.
But you can receive on two different antennas to get different characteristics
Yeah,
and hear
In
different
this
waves.
case, they're polarized differently, one's vertical or one's horizontal.
That's-
Most man-made noise is vertical, so it's noisy.
oh yeah, I meant to show that. There's a big band of noise right here, and barely on the log on the ground. This is just noise right there from something.
So you will transmit on one.
Yeah, only
and
transmit on my
receive the
vertical,
other.
yeah, and,
Receive on both.
I can receive on both, I can put one on each ear.
When you're
and,
not transmitting, you just on
gives
both.
you kind of a different feel for it.
So
I
that's
haven't,
the advantage is the noise.
yeah, the noise is the
Noise
advantage,
floor
it's
is
much lower noise.
Much lower.
Loop quiet, is this more quiet than other loops?
Oh yeah, well, I don't have experience with other ones on this radio, but it's like compared to that vertical, it's like dead quiet.
Loop antennas are inherently quiet.
Yeah.
That's a horizontal polarized.
Okay.
They asked the same question I
All
asked.
right.
I was trying to figure out what's the advantage to have a receive only.
Yeah.
I get it now.
Yeah, so it's, if I couldn't, hear both of them at the same time, I don't know if I will probably wouldn't even try it, but, it's, gives me more options, and we'll see. I'll let you know if I get a contact because I had this. Yeah.
How directional is that?
I should have brought the lobes up, but they're, it's fairly directional. So the way you can do omnidirectional, you can build another one. And the KK5JY said to make it at least one length away from it. Another guy did one where he puts it right next to it and uses a relay to switch between them. I'm thinking maybe I just run another coax to the one right next to it, and then just, because I have another RX port, and just switch RX ports when I want to change it.
Yeah.
Still deciding whether I want to do the relay or not. All right, thank you. So that is it for the presentations. Thank you for everyone that did one, and we'll be doing this next February, so get your projects ready.